There comes a moment in every believer's life when prayer alone doesn't seem enough. You've asked, you've cried, you've believed, but the situation hasn't changed. Bills still pile up. Opportunities seem distant, and the pressure feels real. But what if the problem isn't that God hasn't heard you? What if the missing piece is not more prayer, but a shift in how you use your authority? You were never meant to beg for provision. You were designed to walk in it, to enforce it, and to speak it into manifestation. There is a divine system already in place, one that responds not just to hope, but to faith-filled words spoken with authority. Authority in the name of Jesus is not a symbolic idea or a religious phrase you repeat without understanding. It is a real, delegated power that has been placed in your hands as a believer, and most people live their entire lives without ever truly using it. When you begin to understand that the name of Jesus is not just something you say at the end of a prayer, but a position of authority you stand in, everything about the way you approach life begins to change. You stop coming from a place of weakness, and you start operating from a place of dominion. You must realize that authority is never felt, it is known. It does not come because you feel strong, and it does not disappear because you feel weak. Authority works because it has been given, not because it has been earned. Just like a police officer can stand in the middle of the road and stop traffic, not because of physical strength, but because of the authority behind the badge, you have been given the right to stand in the face of lack, debt, and financial pressure and command it to change, not in your own name, but in the name that is above every name. Most people are waiting for God to move, but God is waiting for them to exercise what He has already given them. He has already authorized you. He has already empowered you. But authority that is not used is authority that produces nothing. You can have the highest level of authority and still live defeated if you never open your mouth and enforce it. When you speak in the name of Jesus, you are not trying to make something happen. You are declaring what has already been established in the spiritual realm. You are aligning your words with heaven's reality. And when your words line up with that authority, things must begin to shift. Lack cannot argue with that name. Debt cannot resist that name. Confusion cannot stand against that name. But it only works when it is spoken with confidence, with boldness, and with the understanding that you have the legal right to use it. Too many believers speak timidly, almost apologetically, as if they are hoping something might change. But authority never begs. Authority commands. Authority speaks knowing that what it says carries weight. And when you begin to speak over your finances in that name, you are not just talking, you are releasing spiritual force that begins to rearrange circumstances, open doors, and bring provision from places you never expected. This is where the shift happens, from asking to declaring, from hoping to knowing, from waiting to enforcing. You stop saying, "God, please help me," and you begin to say, "In the name of Jesus, I command every financial burden to be lifted, every lack to be replaced with abundance, every closed door to open." And as you continue to speak, not once, not twice, but consistently, something begins to build on the inside of you, a confidence, a boldness, a certainty that what you are saying is not empty words, but backed by divine authority. And the moment you truly grasp that you have been given the right to use that name, you will never approach your financial situation the same way again, because you will no longer see yourself as someone trying to survive. You will see yourself as someone who has the authority to change what you are facing simply by speaking in alignment with that name, refusing to back down, refusing to speak doubt, and refusing to accept anything less than what has already been made available to you through that authority. Faith-filled confession is not merely positive thinking or repeating hopeful phrases. It is the deliberate act of aligning your words with what you believe has already been established, regardless of what your circumstances are telling you. It is speaking from conviction, not from emotion, and it requires discipline, because everything around you will try to pull your words in the opposite direction. Your senses will report lack, your mind will calculate limitations, and your environment may confirm delay, but faith refuses to echo what is seen, and instead declares what is believed. Most people speak what they feel, and because they speak what they feel, they remain bound to what they see. But when you begin to operate in faith-filled confession, you reverse that pattern. You begin to speak not based on your current financial condition, but based on the truth you have chosen to stand on. Even when the account looks empty, even when opportunities seem scarce, even when pressure is rising, your words remain steady, because they are rooted in something deeper than circumstances. You must understand that words are containers. They carry either faith or doubt, and whichever one they carry will eventually shape your reality. When you continually say, "I'm struggling," "I'll never get ahead," or "nothing is working," you are not just describing your situation, you are reinforcing it. But when you begin to confess, "Provision is coming," "My needs are met," "Increase is working in my life," you are not denying reality, you are changing its direction by introducing a higher truth into the situation. This kind of confession must be intentional. It does not happen by accident, because the natural tendency is always to speak what is easiest, what is obvious, and what everyone else is saying. But faith-filled confession requires you to guard your mouth, to catch yourself when negative words try to come out, and to replace them with words that carry belief. It is a conscious decision to refuse agreement with lack and instead come into agreement with abundance. Consistency is where most people fail. They may speak faith one moment and then undo it the next with doubt-filled words. They declare increase in the morning, but complain about bills in the afternoon. That mixture cancels the effect, because faith operates through steady alignment, not occasional bursts of belief. When your words remain consistent, even in the face of contradiction, they begin to build momentum. What once felt unnatural becomes your default language, and what once seemed impossible begins to feel inevitable. You are not trying to convince God. He already knows what you need. You are training your own spirit to stay aligned, to remain steady, and to refuse distraction. Your confession is not for information. It is for transformation. It reshapes how you think, how you respond, and ultimately how you experience life. The more you speak in alignment with faith, the less room doubt has to operate, and the more your inner world begins to reflect the outcome you are expecting. Over time, something powerful begins to happen. Your words stop feeling like effort and start flowing with confidence. You no longer hesitate or second guess what you say, because you have trained yourself to speak from belief rather than fear. And when that shift takes place, your confession is no longer just something you do. It becomes who you are, a constant expression of faith that continues to shape your financial reality every time you open your mouth and choose words that align with what you are expecting rather than what you are experiencing. Speaking to circumstances is where many people hesitate, because it challenges everything they have been taught about how to deal with problems. Most are comfortable talking about their situation, analyzing it, explaining it, even praying about it, but speaking directly to it feels unfamiliar. Yet there is a profound difference between talking about a problem and addressing it with authority. One keeps you aware of the issue, the other positions you to change it. When you begin to speak to your financial situation, you are no longer treating it as something distant or untouchable. You are confronting it. You are addressing it as something that must respond to the authority you carry. Instead of saying, "I don't know how I'm going to pay these bills," you shift to saying, "In the name of Jesus, every need is supplied, every bill is paid, and lack has no place in my life." That shift may seem simple, but it changes the entire dynamic. You are no longer a victim of circumstances, you are a participant in changing them. Circumstances often appear solid and unmovable, especially when they have been present for a long time. Debt that has accumulated over years, financial pressure that keeps returning, doors that seem permanently closed, all of these can create the illusion that nothing will ever change. But circumstances are not as permanent as they appear. They are subject to change when they are consistently challenged by words spoken in authority and belief. You must understand that silence often allows situations to remain as they are. When you say nothing, you are not neutral. You are allowing the current condition to continue without resistance. But the moment you begin to speak, you introduce a force that begins to push against what exists. You are declaring that what you see is not final, that what you are experiencing is not permanent, and that there is a higher outcome that must take its place. This is not about pretending the problem doesn't exist. It is about refusing to let the problem have the final say. You can acknowledge what is there without agreeing with it. You can recognize the presence of lack while still declaring that it is temporary and subject to change. Your words become the line that you draw, the boundary that says, "This is as far as it goes and no further." There will be moments when it feels like nothing is happening, when your words seem to echo without immediate results. This is where persistence becomes critical. Speaking once is not enough when the situation has been reinforced over time by fear, doubt, and negative confession. You must continue to speak, continue to declare, continue to address the situation until your words carry more weight in your life than the circumstances themselves. As you stay consistent, something begins to shift internally first. You stop reacting emotionally to every financial pressure. You stop feeling overwhelmed by every bill or unexpected expense. Instead, there is a growing sense of control, not because the situation has fully changed yet, but because you know you are actively influencing it. Your words are no longer passive. They are targeted, intentional, and directed at producing a specific outcome. And as you continue to speak directly to your finances, to opportunities, to provision, to every area that once seemed out of your control, you begin to notice changes, sometimes subtle, sometimes sudden. Doors begin to open, ideas begin to come, resources begin to appear, and what once felt stuck starts to move, not because you ignored the situation, but because you confronted it with authority, refused to be silent, and consistently spoke to it as something that must align with what you are declaring rather than remain as it was. The power of words is one of the most underestimated forces in a person's life, especially when it comes to finances. Words are not empty sounds that disappear into the air. They are carriers of direction, belief, and outcome. Every time you speak, you are setting something in motion, whether you realize it or not. Your words either reinforce what you are experiencing, or they begin to shape what you will experience next. Most people use words casually, without awareness, speaking whatever comes to mind in the moment. When pressure rises, they speak fear. When bills increase, they speak lack. When things slow down, they speak doubt. And over time, those words begin to create a pattern, a cycle that keeps repeating itself. It's not that they want negative results. It's that they are unknowingly fueling those results through consistent negative confession. Words have creative ability. They give form to thoughts and direction to outcomes. When you continually say, "I can't afford this," "money never stays with me," or "things are getting worse," you are not just reacting, you are programming your environment to follow the direction of those words. Your mind begins to accept those statements as truth. Your actions start to align with them, and your circumstances eventually reflect them. But the same principle works in the opposite direction. When you begin to speak words filled with faith, expectation, and confidence, you introduce a different pattern. You start declaring increase even when decrease is visible. You speak stability even when things feel uncertain. You declare provision even when there seems to be none. And as those words are repeated consistently, they begin to reshape your thinking first, then your decisions, and eventually your results. There is a direct connection between what you say and what you experience, but it is not always immediate. This is where many people misunderstand the process. They speak something once, see no instant change, and assume it has no effect. But words operate like seeds. They are planted, they take time, and then they produce. If negative words have been spoken for years, it takes consistent, positive, faith-filled words to uproot that pattern and replace it with something new. Discipline over your words is essential. You cannot afford to speak carelessly and expect consistent results. You must become aware of what you are saying throughout the day, especially in moments of pressure. It is easy to speak faith when everything is going well, But the real test comes when circumstances challenge you. In those moments, your words reveal what you truly believe. And if you allow negative words to dominate in those moments, they will carry more weight than occasional positive declarations. Replacing negative speech requires intentional effort. You catch the wrong words before they fully come out. You correct yourself when necessary, and you deliberately choose words that align with where you want to go rather than where you currently are. Over time, this becomes less of a struggle and more of a habit. Your default response begins to shift from fear to faith, from doubt to confidence, from lack to expectation. As this transformation takes place, you begin to notice that your words are no longer just reactions, they are tools. You use them to direct your day, to influence your decisions, and to shape your financial reality. You stop speaking based on emotion and start speaking based on intention. Every statement becomes purposeful, every declaration becomes strategic, and every word begins to carry the weight of belief rather than uncertainty. And as you continue to guard your speech and consistently release words that align with provision, increase, and stability, you begin to build a new pattern, one where your words are no longer working against you, but are actively working for you, setting the direction for your finances and reinforcing the outcome you expect every time you speak. Breaking the poverty mindset is not simply about having more money. It is about changing the internal framework through which you see money, opportunity, and your own ability to experience increase. Many people try to change their financial situation without ever addressing the mindset that keeps recreating it. As a result, even when opportunities come, they hesitate, they doubt, they pull back, or they make decisions that bring them right back to where they started. The issue is not always the lack of provision. It is the presence of a mindset that expects lack and unconsciously cooperates with it. A poverty mindset is built over time through repeated exposure to limitation, struggle, and negative beliefs about money. It develops when a person constantly hears things like, "Money is hard to get," "People like us never get ahead," or "There's never enough." These ideas may seem small at first, but as they are repeated and accepted, they begin to shape identity. A person stops seeing lack as temporary and starts seeing it as normal. They begin to expect struggle, and expectation influences behavior more than opportunity ever will. When you operate from a poverty mindset, even increase can feel uncomfortable. You may receive something good and immediately look for what could go wrong. You may have an opportunity and hesitate because it feels too big or too uncertain. You may even sabotage progress by making decisions rooted in fear rather than confidence. It is not because you don't want better. It is because your internal belief system has not yet aligned with the idea that better is truly possible for you. Breaking this mindset requires intentional resistance against those deeply rooted beliefs. You cannot passively hope it changes. You must actively challenge it. Every time a thought of lack arises, every time fear tries to dictate your decision, every time doubt questions your ability to move forward, you must confront it. You replace thoughts of limitation with thoughts of possibility. You replace words of struggle with declarations of provision. You refuse to let old patterns of thinking dictate new outcomes. This process often feels uncomfortable at first because you are going against what has been familiar for so long. Your mind may try to pull you back into old patterns, reminding you of past failures, past disappointments, and past struggles. But those past experiences do not define your future unless you continue to agree with them. When you begin to think differently and speak differently, you are creating a new path, one that is not tied to your history, but aligned with where you are going. Consistency is essential in this transformation. You cannot think differently one day and return to old patterns the next. The poverty mindset is persistent, and it will try to reassert itself through thoughts of fear, hesitation, and limitation. But as you continue to reject those thoughts and replace them with confidence, expectation, and belief, something begins to shift internally. The ideas that once felt impossible begin to feel achievable. The opportunities that once felt intimidating begin to feel accessible. As your mindset changes, your perception changes. You begin to see opportunities where you once saw obstacles. You begin to recognize possibilities that you previously overlooked. You become more willing to take steps forward, not recklessly, but with a sense of confidence that was not there before. Your decisions start to reflect growth instead of fear, and those decisions begin to produce different results. This shift is not about pretending challenges don't exist. It is about refusing to let those challenges define your identity or limit your expectation. You no longer see yourself as someone trying to escape lack. You see yourself as someone who is positioned for increase. And when that belief becomes rooted, it begins to influence every area of your financial life, from how you think, to how you speak, to how you act, creating a new pattern that moves you away from limitation and toward a life where provision, opportunity, and growth become your new normal. Receiving God's provision is not about trying to convince Him to give. It is about positioning yourself to take hold of what has already been made available. Many people live in a constant cycle of asking, hoping, and waiting, as if provision is something distant that must be persuaded to come closer. But provision is not withheld in the way people often think. The real issue is not God's willingness to give, but the believer's readiness to receive. Receiving requires alignment. It is not passive, and it is not accidental. You cannot live in contradiction, speaking doubt, expecting lack, and then wonder why provision seems delayed. There must be a harmony between what you believe, what you say, and what you expect. When those three come into agreement, you create an environment where receiving becomes natural rather than difficult. One of the greatest obstacles to receiving is the mindset that says, "I'm not sure if this is for me." That uncertainty creates hesitation, and hesitation blocks the flow of what could have been received. When you truly believe that provision belongs to you, not based on your performance, but based on what has already been established, your posture changes. You stop reaching out timidly, and you begin to take hold with confidence, knowing that what you are receiving is not something you are stealing. It is something you have the right to walk in. Another barrier is the habit of focusing more on the problem than the supply. When your attention is fixed on bills, debt, and pressure, those things appear larger than they actually are. They dominate your thinking, influence your emotions, and shape your expectations. But when you shift your focus to provision, even before it fully appears, you begin to strengthen your ability to receive. Your expectation moves from, "How will I get through this?" to "Provision is already working on my behalf." Receiving also requires you to let go of control in a certain sense, not in action, but in outcome. Many people try to figure out exactly how provision will come, limiting it to their own understanding or past experiences. They look for familiar paths, expected opportunities, and predictable results. But provision is not restricted to what you have seen before. It can come through unexpected doors, uncommon connections, and ideas you have never considered. When you remain open, without forcing a specific method, you allow room for greater possibilities to unfold. Gratitude plays a powerful role in receiving. When you begin to act as though provision is already in motion, even before you see the full result, you shift your internal state from lack to expectation. Gratitude is not just a response to what you have, it is an expression of what you believe is coming. It strengthens your awareness of supply and reduces the tendency to focus on what is missing. There is also a need for readiness. You cannot receive what you are not prepared to handle. As your expectation for provision increases, your mindset, your decisions, and your actions must reflect that expectation. You become more responsible, more aware, and more intentional with what you have because you are preparing for increase. This readiness positions you to not only receive, but to sustain what comes. Doubt will try to interfere, especially when time passes and visible results are not immediate. It will suggest that nothing is happening, that things will remain the same, that your expectation is misplaced. But receiving requires you to remain steady, to hold your position, and to continue expecting even when there is no visible confirmation yet. The unseen movement is often taking place before the visible result appears. As you continue to align your belief, your words, and your expectation with provision. You begin to notice a shift, not just in what comes to you, but in how you perceive everything around you. You become more aware of opportunities, more responsive to direction, and more confident in taking steps forward. Receiving no longer feels like a struggle or a distant hope, but a natural outcome of living in alignment with what has already been made available, maintaining that alignment daily, and refusing to let doubt, fear, or past limitations pull you out of position. Consistency in faith practice is what separates momentary inspiration from lasting transformation. Many people experience short bursts of belief. They feel encouraged. They speak positively for a while. They expect change. But when results don't appear immediately, they drift back into old patterns. It is not that faith didn't work. It is that it was not sustained long enough to produce visible results. Faith is not a one-time action. It is a continuous posture, a daily discipline that must be maintained regardless of what is seen or felt. The challenge with consistency is that it requires you to keep going even when there is no immediate feedback. In the natural world, people are used to seeing quick results for their efforts, but in the realm of faith, there is often a period where nothing seems to change on the surface. This is where many stop. They speak for a few days, maybe a few weeks, and when circumstances remain the same, they assume it is not working. But what they fail to realize is that something is happening beneath the surface, something that requires time, persistence, and unwavering alignment. Consistency means your words do not change based on your mood. It means your belief does not fluctuate with circumstances. One day you are not speaking faith, and the next day speaking doubt. That instability weakens the process. But when you remain steady, when your words, your thoughts, and your expectations stay aligned day after day, you begin to build momentum. That momentum is what eventually produces visible change. There will be moments when external pressure tries to break your consistency. Unexpected expenses, delayed opportunities, negative reports, these things will attempt to pull you back into fear and doubt. In those moments, consistency becomes a conscious choice. You decide that regardless of what is happening around you, your response will remain the same. You will continue to speak provision. You will continue to expect increase. You will continue to act in alignment with what you believe, even if everything around you suggests otherwise. Repetition plays a crucial role in this process. When you consistently speak the same truth over and over again, it begins to take root within you. At first, it may feel forced or unnatural, especially if it contradicts what you have experienced for a long time. But as you continue, those words begin to reshape your thinking. They become familiar, then believable, and eventually automatic. What once required effort becomes your natural response. Consistency also builds resilience. The longer you stay aligned, the less you are shaken by temporary setbacks. You stop reacting emotionally to every change in circumstance because you understand that those changes are not final. You develop a kind of inner stability, a confidence that is not dependent on immediate results, but rooted in the process you are committed to. That stability allows you to keep moving forward without being easily discouraged. Another important aspect of consistency is that it eliminates contradiction. When you are inconsistent, you often cancel out your own progress, speaking faith in one moment and doubt in the next. But when you are consistent, every word, every thought, and every action begins to reinforce the same direction. There is no internal conflict, no mixed signals. Everything within you is moving toward the same outcome, and that unity strengthens the effectiveness of your faith. Over time, consistency produces evidence. What you have been declaring starts to appear. What you have been expecting begins to manifest. The change may not come all at once, but it comes steadily in ways that confirm that your persistence was not in vain. And when you begin to see those results, it strengthens your commitment even more, making it easier to remain consistent because you now have proof that what you are doing is working. As you continue in this pattern, day after day, choosing the same words, the same belief, the same expectation, you move beyond temporary effort into a lifestyle of faith. It becomes part of how you think, how you speak, and how you live. And in that place, Consistency is no longer something you struggle to maintain, but something that defines your approach to every situation, keeping you aligned, focused, and steadily moving toward the outcome you have been declaring from the very beginning. What you have heard is not just a message. It is a shift in how you approach your financial life. The difference between struggle and breakthrough is not found in chance, luck, or timing, but in understanding what has already been given to you and choosing to walk in it daily. You are not without help, and you are not without authority. The power to change your situation is not somewhere far away. It is already within your reach, waiting to be exercised through your faith, your words, and your consistency. You don't have to remain where you are. Lack is not your identity, and limitation is not your future. The moment you begin to see yourself differently, speak differently, and respond differently, you step into a new direction. You stop reacting to life and start shaping it. You stop waiting for change and begin enforcing it. Every word you speak, every belief you hold, and every action you take becomes part of a process that is moving you toward increase, provision, and stability. There may be moments when it feels slow, when results are not immediate, and when pressure tries to convince you to go back to old ways of thinking and speaking. But this is where your decision matters most. You choose to stay aligned. You choose to keep speaking. You choose to keep believing. Because you now understand that what you are doing is not empty. It is working, even when you cannot yet see the full picture. As you continue, you will notice the shift. Your confidence will grow. Your thinking will expand. Opportunities will begin to appear. What once felt impossible will start to feel within reach. And step by step, your financial reality will begin to reflect the words you have been consistently speaking and the faith you have been steadily building. So from this point forward, you refuse to speak lack. You refuse to agree with limitation. You refuse to let circumstances define your outcome. Instead, you stand firm, you speak with authority, and you align yourself with provision, knowing that what you declare in faith and consistency will not return empty, but will produce exactly what it was sent to accomplish.